when he decided to come back like that, it was seamless, and he came back into the mix, and the relationship and the things that we went through together, 7 or 8 years ago, and be in the previous 10-year period of time, never went away. And so, but I think there was a greater appreciation by both of us really on how special that was. And then to see him actually, there's a lot of guys who come back and say, I'm going to do a comeback and see if I can do it and all that sort of stuff, but they never really realize the goal, right? I mean, Phelps is a pretty special example, but other people that we've seen from time to time try and come back and never really get there. And for him to come all the way back and actually get there was pretty cool. And so I felt some pretty strong emotion at that point in time, and appreciated everything that he had done, and he had appreciated everything that I had done in order to get there, right? So it was good.
Bonjour, welcome. This is a new episode of All the Talk today, episode 54 already, 54. Today I have a very special guest, like I used to say. We have on the show one of the best coaches in Canada. I would say, I don't think there is more coaches who achieve more Olympics than you. You're going to tell me if I'm wrong or not. We are trying to have the count. We stopped at 10 participation at the Olympics, 14 participation to the World Championship, and not even counting the Commonwealth Games. I have the pleasure to receive today from BC, Vancouver, Tom Johnson. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate being here. Nice to be here.
I'm very happy to have you. We tried to make that talk before the Olympics, but after it works as well. It's a good opportunity for everyone.
Sure.
So Tom,
my pleasure.
Thank you very much again. Welcome in All the Talk. It's not a full show of swimming. I did receive a lot of different sports, but as a swimming coach, of course, I did a lot of swimming episode. You are coming back from the Olympic. I want to jump in straight to that. Your iconic swimmer, Brent Hayden, did amazing there. We're going to start with Brent because, I think he has the guest place, or the honor to achieve those in this Olympic at the age of 37. Amazing performance. I don't think there is anyone in the world who swam that fast at his age. So I want to start with the 100 free in a 4x1. I have a simple question. Were you a little bit surprised about his 47 time?
Well, we never started out thinking he would be swimming 100 meters. We thought always that he just wanted to see how fast he could go in a 50. And he did say that he would be interested in helping with the relay if it worked out, but he was not sure exactly, if he would be fit enough, or, if he was too old or whatever. So when we got down to March of 2020 and we went to Des Moines, and he swam the 50 free against Caleb Dressel and Nathan Adrian and went 21.9. The night before that, we had traveled from Vancouver, and he said, well, like only one day before, and he said, can I swim the 100 free? But I hadn't even entered him in the 100 free. So I said, nah, well, not really, but we'll see if we can time trial. So we went and we asked for a time trial, and he time trialed the day before the 50 free. I think the 50 free was on Sunday, and this was on a Saturday. We traveled on the Friday. So he said, okay. And he went like 49.3 or 49.4 in the 100, and he would have been third or fourth in the meet, right, as it was, because the 100 free was on the Thursday, I think, or something. So anyway, it sort of indicated at a very early stage in this comeback of his, basically starting in September of 2019 and getting to March of 2020, so 6 months in, and he's going 49.4. And I think he surprised himself there, but we just kept going and training and still never changed the focus away from the 50 free. But when he swam in that Take 5 meet in Toronto 3 weeks or 4 weeks before the Olympic trials, and we were trying to make sure that we had a relay team that was going to qualify for Tokyo, and we were 16th, and there were all the swims coming from the European Championships, and it was always possible that somebody, whether it would be China or Greece or some other country, would do a time trial after the deadline and knock us out, and then we wouldn't have a relay. So we put a team up in that competition. It was Brent, Marcus Thormeyer, Yuri Kissel, and Josh Liendo. And we actually swam, the order was Brent, Josh, Marcus, and Yuri. And they went 2 seconds faster than we went in Beijing or in Guangzhou. Wow. So I was exciting, but Brent led off in 48.5. And the day before that, he had done 100 free, and he won the 100 free from the outside lane in 49.1. And in typical Brent Hayden fashion, whatever he goes in the first swim of a competition, generally he'll go 5 to 6 tenths faster in the second swim. So he got up and he says, I can fix this. So he realized he wasn't out very well and didn't swim into the turn very well on that race. And he went out in 22.9. And I think Josh Liendo and Yuri and Marcus behind the blocks suddenly realized, okay, game on. And they went, and Brent went 48.4, right? It was faster than what he did to qualify for the semifinals in London. Yeah. And that was a pretty good indication. And so, still, we only were working towards the 100 or towards the 50 at the Olympic trials to solidify his place. And those other guys that were swimming quite well, including Finley Knox, who had gone 49.0 or 49.1. So anyway, it just worked out at the Olympic trials that, with the 50 free ahead of the 100 free, he's a bit too old to be able to do that and get up the next morning and still swim. And he was not feeling great the next morning. His back was a bit sore. So rather than swim the 100 in the competition, we just went, okay, we're not going to do it. And then it was a crazy 100. If you remember the final, Yuri Kissel got hurt in the warm-up. Brent didn't swim, right? Suddenly the event was wide open, and Josh swam really well at 48.1. It was a very good swim. Mm-hmm. Yuri, we didn't see what he could do, but he'd been faster than he'd been for 5 years at 48.4, and he was a couple of hundredths faster than Brent. So it meant that Brent wasn't going to get the swim at the Olympics anyway. And, I just said to Brent when we got out of the Olympic trials and we're preparing for the Olympics that your 100 free is going to be the lead off on the relay. And that's really all we need you to do. And he led off, and I can't remember what he went in the prelims, but in the final he went 47.99, and everybody just went, holy mackerel, this is amazing, right, for somebody that age to do it. But I mean, he took very good care of himself and his body, and he's still technically very, very sound. He's really, really strong. And you always think that what could he have done if he actually prepared for the event, right? Because it took 47.4 or 47.1 to win a medal. So that was a pretty tough event. But he would have been probably in the final if he'd spent a bit more time on it. But we never changed from what we were doing. We just focused on the 50, and that was his best ever finish in a 50 in Olympic or World Championship swimming, right? Finishing 9th in that situation. And he showed a degree of reliability. But a guy like Bruno Fratus has been under 22 over 90 times, and Brent probably has been under 22 less than 10 times, right? Yeah. So he doesn't know that event as well as the other guys, but we'll see what happens, what he decides to do with his swimming in the go forward. But certainly he was the talk of the meet in that sense, and I think it was very gratifying for him and impressive for everybody to see somebody of that age and stature come back with that length of time, 5 years or 7 years out of the water, and then stand up and swim that kind of performance was pretty good.
Yeah. So, don't you think that as a coach, I love sprint as well, and I do think that most of the best swimmers in 100 are coming from the 50, That's history saying that, and you building your program on working on the 50 did help him a lot to achieve a good 100. And when you have the speed, it's kind of a key. Did you ever build any preparation like this with him? Even the 100 wasn't the goal. Did you ever focus on the 50 to move on to the 100 ever in your career with him?
Never. We always moved from the 200 down to the 100, and the 50 was an afterthought, because when he was young, as an 18, 19-year-old guy, he didn't have great speed. He had 23 plus speed. He was never, initial speed wasn't his forte. And so he developed that speed later in his career. By 2010, I think he went 21.7, and he won the Commonwealth Games in 2010 and in the 50. But it was never really a major focus for him. He was really more about the 100 free, and he came at it from the 200. But there was a point, just with the order of events at the Olympics and the World Championships and the way that the heats and the semis and the finals play out, that and the relays, it's very challenging to be able to do the 100 and the 200 and all the relays. It just doesn't really lend itself to that. Where back in the day when Biondi would swim the 200 and the 100, that was very much a thing, right? Spitz, 100 and 200 freestyle. But 100 and 200 freestyle now, with the way it's ordered and the relays and the 4x1, 4x2, it's almost impossible, right? And then when you're sitting there at the end of 6 swims plus relay swims, right, which is potentially up to 8 to 10 swims, and then you start the 50 free, if those guys, the big guys, are just sitting there waiting, and they pick him off, and so he would be really hard pressed to make a final or make a semifinal. He might make the semifinal, but he had nothing left, and then at night they'd all lift and blow him out of the water, and he'd sit back and go home and cry in his soup. So it's like that was the end of that, right? So,
kind of hard for him. You talk a little bit about his future and what could come for him. Like it's 37, might be 41 or 40 in 2024. I know that he might really want to keep going on. By the way, cheers to you. I don't have anyone here, but it's late night in Montreal, but
yeah.
It's always good time. It's always good time. He talked a little bit about probably moving on to 2024, swimming the 50. He took very good care of himself. Like you said, his shape was incredible. I saw some kind of improvement in his start at his age, which is crazy. He gained a lot of power. What do you think he could go in 3 years? Is he way he could still improve?
I think he can still improve, because he's a racer, and he didn't race. Every time we swam, except when we got to the Olympic trials and the Olympic Games, he swam against himself. There was nobody who could go in practice, or 1 or 2 days notice, okay, Brent, you come to the pool, put on a suit, we're doing a dive 50 in training, and would go 22 flat. There was nobody like that, right? In my training group. And there's very few people in the world. And we were watching what people around the world were doing in the various competitions, and seeing that, guys like Guinaudeau and different people would go 22.2, and Brent would be 22.1 and 22.19 or 22.09 or whatever. So he was very competitive in that situation, right? But I think the fine little points of being in hard racing in that event was missing, right? In his race in Tokyo, he didn't have that this time, right? So that's where I think he can improve if he sticks around, and he has to be able to afford to do it. And he made a big difference with the relay team and with those guys, and mentoring them and giving them an imagination around what was possible. And he said to them after the Take 5 meet, like, he remembered the South Africans in Athens.
Yeah.
Nobody expected them to be competitive, and they ended up winning the relay, right? And I think nobody expected us to be able to take, that relay and be in a bronze medal position 15 meters from the end of the race, right? And so I think that's exciting. I think there's new guys on the horizon in Canadian swimming that, in 3 or 4 years can maybe either fill his shoes or complement what he's doing. But you need 6 or 8 guys. You're not going to do it with 4 people and still build that men's team out so that they're able to swim the 100s and the 200s and the 4x200 and the 4x100 and cross all of these events, right, that are out there and be comparable to what the women are doing, right? And even with the best women that we had, Kylie Mass second. We didn't have anybody really competitive in the 100 breaststroke. We filled in with Sydney Pickram, but then we had Maggie, gold medal winner in the 100 fly, and Penny fourth in the 100 free on about her 7th or 8th swim in the meet, right? And we got bronze, right? So that's the level that you need to be able to swim at if you're going to compete across the board in all of the events that, for men's swimming, right? So that kind of level, right? So
you are basically saying that if there is 2 more guys coming in, helping the team out, there is a little chance to see him on that relay in 3 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, Brent is looking at it and saying, well, it's only 2 years and 11 months to the next Olympics. And I've already gone through the hardest year, which is the year after the Olympics, because it was the Olympic year times 2. He's already done that year. So we'll see. He's going to do the ISL in
Napoli.
Naples. Napoli, starting in August 23rd. He texted me today, said, when should I get back in the water? What should I be doing? So we'll see, right? So
nice. So that brings me to another topic, and I observe a lot. I love to watch coaches and swimmer relationship, and you guys bonding. And I felt like in trials, it was the first time that I saw you guys, I would say, sharing to everyone publicly that bound. I felt that bound very strongly after the 53. And I'm sure that's your swimmer. You coach him for how many years?
Well, since a long time. Since 2004, 2001 maybe, right?
2001. So Fukuoka a year or after?
20 years, right? So yeah.
Wow. So to me, witnessing that moment of emotion was beautiful. I mean, coaches, we busting out our ass a lot. Like the work we do is different. Like in that you compare with a lot of sports, a lot of time on the pool deck, a lot of time coaching. Sometimes it's a lot of early time,
Yeah.
And that's a lot of sacrifice in our life. And have the chance that you had to develop your athletes and have that long race, that long momentum, keep going on year after year after year after year, even if you quit for a few years, was beautiful to watch. How special for you was that moment?
I think often we take those things for granted, and for me, for Brent to sort of realize that the goal that he was trying to get to, he's a pretty sensitive guy, and he's not shy about showing his emotion. And I think that for me, it was a moment where I realized that, these moments may not come out again. And so in 2012, when he won that medal at the Olympics, which was a culmination of 11 years of work, right? And he'd won every single event that there is to win except an Olympic medal up until that point in time, right? But he never told me that he was going to retire. And so we went to this celebration with the Canadian Olympic Committee at Trafalgar Square the day after the Olympic swimming finished. And he stood on the podium with Marcel Abou and these guys and said, basically, I retire. and then he went and got married. And I basically never really had time to talk to him after the fact, other than just in passing and everything. And then when he decided to come back like that, it was seamless, and he came back into the mix, and the relationship and the things that we went through together, 7 or 8 years ago, and be in the previous 10-year period of time, never went away. And so, but I think there was a greater appreciation by both of us really on how special that was. And then to see him actually, there's a lot of guys who come back and say, I'm going to do a comeback and see if I can do it and all that sort of stuff, but they never really realize the goal, right? I mean, Phelps is a pretty special example, but other people that we've seen from time to time try and come back and never really get there. And for him to come all the way back and actually get there was pretty cool. And so I felt some pretty strong emotion at that point in time, and appreciated everything that he had done, and he had appreciated everything that I had done in order to get there, right? So it was good.
It was beautiful to watch, because you are not the most expressive coach on the deck, showing a lot about your emotion, and watching that was beautiful. Seriously, I felt truly happy for you, and I think that's the blessing of that job, and I'm trying to learn the best way to enjoy and to not miss those moments, and it's very, very, the human connection is the strongest tool we can use to perform, I think.
I think you're right. I think it's all about that relationship. And if you get that relationship, even though as you say, it may not necessarily be that readily visible, but I do have pretty strong connection with the swimmers that I've had over time, who have been the best performers. And I think it's a fundamental aspect or component of high level success is this relationship that you have with your athletes that transcends not just giving them a practice and taking them through practice, but actually knowing them as people and respecting them and treating them with the kind of dignity that they need in order to be the best version of themselves every day, and that's not easy to do under the pressure of not only their own pressure, but everybody else's expectations and pressures, family, sport organizations, coaches, you name it, right? Like there's a lot going on out there. And so they need a safe place, right, to be able to go to and know that there's somebody there going to be on their side no matter what, right? And I think that's what I try and do, right, in terms of providing that.
So Tom, we are talking about 2024 with Brent Hayden, and if Brent Hayden is deciding to go to 2034, where is this coach is going to go?
Well, my role at the National Center is finished as of August 31st. I'm no longer involved with them. I am exploring some options, and we'll see where that goes. I haven't really had that conversation with Brent, right? But he's going to be in Naples or Napoli with me during the ISL. I'm going to work with Toronto's team, and he's on that team, and we'll talk it through and see where we go, right? But there's a million different options, but at the same time, the other option is just to retire and let someone else do it, so we'll see, right? So,
I felt like you have been the head coach of the High Performance Center in UBC forever, and not seeing you there in September is going to feel kind of weird. What's your feeling about that?
Well, it's not really my choice, right? But it's not in my control. But at the same time, I just turned 70 years old like 3 days ago, and so to maybe look at other options and doing other things with my life as it plays out over the next period of time is something that's pretty exciting, to not have to write workouts or be somewhere sometime every day, to stay competitive and to stay relevant. And, there's a lot of people who have been coaching for a long time, but aren't necessarily relevant all the way through, right? And I feel good about the fact that I've been able to stay relatively competitive with my swimmers all the way through to the end, right? The Olympics this time weren't what I was hoping that they would be or thinking that they could be, but the pandemic and everything that went down, affected different people and different programs in different ways. And we had a lot of challenges with what was going on, and some changes that didn't necessarily lend themselves towards, us being at our best, right? With the pool closures and different things like that. So we did the best we could, and I'm pretty proud of what the kids did, and they stayed together as a group, and they supported each other, and they stuck with me. But if truth be known, I thought we were better, and I thought we could have been better and should have been better in the meet. But as well as I do, what you think and what actually happens are two different things sometimes, and so sometimes that's the way it goes, right? So, but I did feel good about these Olympics in terms of what Brent achieved and what Marcus achieved with his performances and reliability. Marcus had never swum an individual event at the Olympic Games. He only swam the relay in 2016. So he swam a bunch of individual swims. He wasn't as good as I thought he could be. It was interesting, his commentary to me around, he just didn't feel great after he got his vaccination. He never felt good again. Like he just felt tired and different. I don't know if that's got any bearing on it at all, but it's just like, we don't know very much about how that affects different people in different ways, and he didn't have the same sort of spark that he had prior to, right? So anyway, we'll find out, but it's not my problem anymore. It's someone else's problem. Right?
So moving on to the next question about the Olympics. You went to 10 Olympics, the Canadian team, and I don't think, looking at the results, you ever witnessed so many good swims from the team.
Yeah.
How special that was for you?
We knew we were swimming really well in the training camp, and what we were seeing every day, right? And the Toronto group was very good, and the rest of the group was also very good. But certainly, the question was, are we going to be able to take what we're doing in training and actually show up at the meet and do the kind of swims that you need to do in Olympic Games? Yeah. And the interesting thing was that it didn't seem to get in the way, right? Like, for whatever reason, the coaches were really together on what they were doing, and the swimmers were really good. And I think we did the best we could with what we had. And you always feel we had 4 fourth place finishes in addition to the 6 medals that we had. And we had lots of finals and semifinals and best times. And that's really all you can hope for in the Olympic Games, right? Because the Olympic Games make you crazy, right? It's just like many, many, many swimmers go there and stumble, right? When they get to that pressure-packed situation, and to be able to deliver under pressure was really a great thing to see. And the good thing about it was there was a reliability, because that was where we were in 2016. Yeah. And we repeated that in Guangzhou in 2019, and then we repeated it again in 2021. And so I think that there's a confidence there that's building in terms of a competency around what we need to do and how to do it. And I think it's up to the next generation, of swimmers and coaches to carry that point forward, right? And so it'll be fun to see what we can do.
So looking at this next generation, I still have a lot of conversation with some of my coaches' friends in Europe, in France, in England, in Norway, and most of them ask me, "Wow, Canadian swimming is huge now. They are so strong. They're watching from outside, and they're very, very impressed about what we are achieving here." But there are always the same question coming, and a new question used to come now since like 6 months. The first question is why are the boys not there? And the second question coming more and more is, who is that Summer McIntosh? What is she doing? What the hell is she coming from? So I'd like to know your thought on the first question and the second as well, if you can compress them at the same time. But if you want me, I can repeat it after. No problem.
Sure. I think we see women come to the forefront much quicker in the developmental process than we do with the men, right? If you really think about it, Taylor Ruck, nobody knew who she was, and she suddenly went from being basically somewhat obscure to being a 154 and a 51 second, you know, in 95, 96, 97, sorry, when was it? 05, 06, 07.
Yeah.
I'm even dating myself. 15, 16, 17, whatever. In that time frame, right? Like where she went to the World Juniors, she won the World Juniors in 53. The next year she's 52. The next year she's 51 on the relay. And she swam, you know, really good backstroke and really good freestyle. And those kinds of kids come up. And then the question is, can they maintain that, right? We saw that with Sarah Swordstrom in 2009, win the world championship in 100 butterfly. And then, you know, go all the way through, looked like she was going to win the Olympics in 2012 and didn't get a medal and have to come back around. And by 2016, she was a force and she won that gold medal in the 100 fly. And then since then, she's been one of the world's best swimmers, barring this injury that she had, right? And similarly, you have people like Emma McKeon, who, you know, showed really well early in her career and then sort of was always in there, but never really succeeding the way she succeeded in these Olympics. And so I think there's two phases. One is the identification phase and the actual bringing them up to that standard. And then the second part of that is managing them at that point once they're at that level and being able to keep that going. And that's not easy. And even Penny, when you think about Penny and winning the Olympics at 16, she really wasn't that outstanding for the next 5 years or 4 years. And then when she went 52.8 in the trials, the lights seemed to go on. And there's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure she did a lot of work in between, but it wasn't coming together for her. And then suddenly it's coming back together and she's competitive in a very, very big way at the Olympic Games and made a huge impact on the Canadian team. So I think that aspect, when I'm thinking about the men, it's similar, right? Like when you think about Brent Hayden taking 3 Olympics to get to a gold medal, right? Or get to a bronze medal in the Olympic Games. There was a lot of really great results in between those things, but he stumbled every time he got to the Olympic Games. He wasn't very good. And they need to get experienced and blooded in that arena in a big way. And I think some of the things that we're doing with the men, where you see Finlay Knox and you see Cole Pratt and you see, you know, Josh Liendo and these young guys coming through, and Marcus Thormeyer was the first one of those guys who came through, and he's a little bit older than those guys at this point by a year or two. But you'll see that start to develop with the men's program over the next 4 to 6 years, I think. And the big challenge, Greg, is can you get the men and the women swimming at that level at the same time? Yeah. You know? Yeah. And, you know, we've had it, you know, at UBC for a long time where we had both men and women's sides of the program swimming very well at the intercollegiate level. But it wasn't always like that. It was either really good men and not so good women, or really good women and not so good men. And I think part of it is that you have to treat the men a little bit differently, right? And when we were really successful in the 70s and we had strength in the men's and the women's program, in Montreal, in the Montreal Olympics, our women's program was way better than the men's program. But by 1978, 1980, with Graham Smith and Peter Schmidt and Bill Sawchuk and those guys, you know, they led the way for Victor Davis and Alex Bowman and like that, right? And so it's just a matter of time, but it needs a steady hand and it needs constant sort of programming at that level. And we can't give up on those guys too soon because it takes time. It does take time.
I think they are kind of chasing the women now. They are kind of they feel the urge of probably produce a little bit more, and if they are doing it, why not us? You know. So I feel like they believe they believe in them a little bit more than they used to. But for me, I think that, as you said, we have to treat them differently. And I think for too long time, the boys, en français on dit, were les faire valoir des filles. The boys were the good sparring partner for the girl.
Yeah.
and most of the time, and just a few programs are offering specific program for the boys or for the girls, and I think that change now going to bring them and help the boys to catch up a little bit, because it takes longer for a boy. At 16 years old for a man is are not mature like a 16 years old girl normally.
Right.
It takes a
And,
little.
you'll see the girls at 15, 16, 17, 18 look great.
Yeah,
And then sometimes between 19 and 21, 22, 23, not so great. And then they come back like Catherine Savard and,
yeah,
some of these people. This is what happens, right? And I think the identification process needs to consider all of those things, right? Not only their physiological maturity, but their psychological maturity, their swimming age, right? How long have they been training hard, and like that as a way of differentiating, not just only on time, right? It needs to be on, their physical stature and things like that, right? Because, Yuri Kissel was like a stick, right? When he came to me and going 50.8, and 3 years later he's 48.2, and 5 years later he's 48.1, right? But that 48.1 took a lot of work to get that next step. And once you get that event going again, who knows what can happen? But there's psychological and physiological and social maturity that needs to come into to play. And I think the guys and the girls are different, and yet they're similar. And so I think there's a way to do them, bring them together, but also separate them and go back and forth with that. And that will, I think, result in better performances by both sides.
yeah.
Right?
So my second question was
Summer McIntosh.
Summer McIntosh. Then I observe a lot during trials. I felt a lot of determination in her stroke, determination in her body language. She doesn't feel scared. I feel she's a pretty hard racer. I don't know her like you do. What's your take on her?
Ah, she's a great swimmer. Just a sec. I don't want to wake up the little kids. She's a great swimmer. I don't know her very well, to be honest, Greg, but she has a determination and a maturity that's beyond her years in terms of being able to understand what needs to be done in order to be competitive. And she's not afraid of anything, right? She's only 14. She's got no limits in terms of any sort of preconceived ideas of what she should or shouldn't be doing. She just thinks that she needs to race and get up and compete. And Kevin Thorburn did a great job with her in developing those qualities in her as an athlete at a very young age. And then, unfortunately, he passed. But at the same time, she made that transition over to Ben's program, and Ben did a great job with her. So, we're pretty excited to see what she can do in the future for sure.
It was amazing. So that's the end of that talk is bringing me to the next question. What are you thought about the architect Ben Titley?
Oh, he did a great job, and he had a lot of help from Ryan Millette and from the people around him, but he was very clear on what he wanted and what he needed. And he can, we talked about this relationship that with the swimmers being key to this success. And I think he has a really good relationship with the swimmers, and he means business, and they know he means business. And he's just at a good place in his life and in his career, and the results show, right? So
Good. So looking at this Olympics, and I'm gonna get out of the Canadian team a little bit, and I looked at, I would say, the rise of the Australian swimming team, which
yeah,
we wait for a while through Emma McKeon and other swimmer, and the downfall a little bit of the USA team. I don't think they did have the success and they expected to have the US Olympic team. What are your thoughts about this rise and this downfall?
I think the US is always a very, very strong team and very dangerous. But they also, are still, I think, a bit naive around what exactly is going on in the rest of the world. They still have this idea that they're going to go in and dominate every event. And the swimming compression of the field in the sport of swimming is so great that people are coming from everywhere. It's like that guy winning the 400 free from lane 8, right, from Tunisia. I
Next
asked
to the show.
Maloui, who's Maloui? I said, who is that guy? He says, I don't know. He doesn't even know, right? So he's just people coming from all different parts of the world, like the breaststroker from South Africa, the 219 Tatiana Schoenemecker, right? Like just
Yeah.
fantastic swimming. And so there's good coaching and good programming and good athletes in every part of the world. And I think that one of the goals of FINA, and people have criticized FINA for a lot of things, but one of the things they tried to do was to make the sport more of a world sport and not, more global. And I think they can be proud of what they've done because it has, in fact, turned into a global sport, much like track and field, where you see people dominating, or sort of winning from all different places around the world. The reality with the U.S. is that other countries are trying harder, right? And I think that there's going to be phases and periods of time in any country's program where they're going to have weaknesses that will need to be addressed. And so, in spite of them having no medalists since 1984 in the 1500 free in men's swimming, and coming out and winning medals and winning the 800 and doing what they did, you're just going like, this is amazing, right? That from obscurity, basically, whatever, 16, 21, like 37 years, like they hadn't been able to get to the top of the podium, and they did it again, right? And so I think where you see some things get better and other things get worse, and there's a changing of the guard, and you've got Lucas Orlando and the Foster boys and those guys in the United States who didn't get through this time but should be factors next time, right? And so I think the year was a really strange year with the extension of the Olympic cycle, 5-year Olympic cycle, and some people held on, some people didn't, some people got better, some people got worse. Reagan Smith, for instance, everybody thought she was going to walk away with the backstrokes, and then a Kylie Mass and Emma McEwen, or not McEwen, or Kylie McCowan from Australia wins both backstrokes, and you go like, wow, that's amazing, right? And it just shows you what happens at the Olympic Games. But I do think that there is still this, the United States thinks that they're going to win everything every time, and it's the World Series of baseball, and the world's, the Super Bowl is the World Championship and everything, and quite frankly, there's other people trying just as hard, right? So I think that's a reality that they're going to have to face. And on the other end of the spectrum, I think the Australians got a lot of help from Jaco Verhaven and what he did with that program in terms of bringing, a different kind of philosophy and mindset to the program than where they were with the previous generation of coaches, and not necessarily better, but different, right? And it was more in tune with what kids today are looking for. And I think he empowered the coaches, he empowered the athletes, and I think that quiet confidence and notwithstanding Dean Boxall, but like that sort of approach, right, resulted in a calmness in the team that we haven't seen before. And they were just purposeful and motivated, and they were swimming well, and they were coming from all kinds of different places to get to where they got to, right? So
they were very, very, very impressive, the Australian swimming. Talking about Dean Boxall and Jaco Verhoeven, I'm thinking about another coach that I think he should deserve a medal as well. I'm talking about Michael Ball.
Oh, yeah.
Because this guy always produced amazing swimmers, from Stephanie Rice to now Emma McKeon was doing. And I'm sure he doesn't do the same work than he used to. He evolved pretty well as well. What are your thoughts on do you know him very well, Michael Ball?
I know him well, yeah. I think just what I said, he's very responsive to the athlete and can read the athlete really well. And he's firm, but he's also able to develop a relationship with the athlete where they're prepared to do what he's asking them to do. And, there's always pushback, at certain periods of time in any season when the work gets hard or it feels, challenging or whatever. But somehow, like you say, he seems to be able to get the best out of his swimmers on a consistent basis. And he doesn't, if something doesn't go well, he doesn't panic. He keeps his head and just keeps working through it and works all the way through and gets to, at the end of the day, some great results over the course of a whole competition, not just 1 day or 2 days of the meet.
So in all those years of swimming, going through the pandemic the way it was, I did like the pandemic aspect because to me, what we do is an artistic job. That's the way I see it. And we are creating every day. We are lucky enough to try to bring the right stimulus to the athletes. And I think the creation, the creativity we can bring in the practice helps a lot. And I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the pandemic aspect, because moving on the date of the trials from 1 month to another week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks, I had to force the coaches to adapt and get out of the comfort zone. I don't think you ever been there as a coach because the situation was the first time. How do you think those conditions made you coach better?
Well, I agree with you. I think that, we changed the trials date 4 times, right? And you can whenever it was always usually around 21 to 28 days prior to the meet. And you're at a very, very interesting phase of your program where you're coming out of the work into this final stage of preparation and your intensification is going up. And then you're suddenly having to shift gears and go back to training again and back to work. And so, you had to become very, very careful, I suppose, in what you were doing and making sure that on one hand, you weren't coming up and being short on rest, but on the other hand, making sure that you were doing enough work. And so it was very, very challenging and different for every kid and extremely, I think fatiguing mentally to be able to keep doing that, right? It's on the part for the athletes, but also for the coaches and everybody else, where you're getting up and then back down and then up and then back down again. And the complication for us was that we were out of our home environment for 35 days before the Olympic trials, right? Yeah. So we weren't in our own home situation where, even though things were changing, you could still go home and be in something that you knew. Here, things were changing and you were living in a hotel with a paper bag for breakfast, paper bag for lunch, paper bag for dinner, then in a residence that hadn't been lived in for 6 months and had all kinds of challenges there, and then back into a hotel again, right? And it's just like, it was like being in quarantine, right? Literally for 35 days. And so that was made us have to be and be sure to bring our best version of ourselves to the pool every day. And everybody kept the brave face and did the best they could. And I think, we did what we did, but I don't think we did that the results reflected the work that we had done, to be honest with you, right? So
don't you think that as coaches, sometimes we underestimate a little bit the level of adaptation, the capacity of the athlete to adapt to whatever condition? Because sometimes we have all those process in mind, those paradigm that we have in mind, that we have to race there and do this and do that and whatever. And in a year where you don't have all those stuff, you see all the result, and finally it's wow, it's amazing, fast. There is a lot of as fast as it was, probably even faster in some event that was 4 years or 5 years ago. And to me, the conclusion of this was, the lack of, for us coaches, not being able to trust enough the athletes to adapt themselves in whatever conditions there is. And with the pandemic coming in, that's, I think, the big lesson of this period. In Camo, we organize a lot of different swim race, long course, short course, but the swimmer knew that's what they're gonna have, and that's it. And they
Yeah.
show up ready to race, even stressed out like it was in the big meet, because they knew that's the only way to get ready. So they're not gonna. A few of them didn't swim like we expect them to swim in those meet, but I would say most of them were focused and ready to go fast and get ready for the next level. So don't you think on that aspect we are wrong sometimes, coaches?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the competitive nature of the athlete is such that they're going to find a way. If they have their head straight, they're going to get up and give us their best effort no matter what. Right. Yeah. And I think our kids did a great job of that. Right. And just trying to be ready in any kind of circumstance at any point in time. Right. So, yeah, we learned a lot from this whole thing. Right. In terms of, not having so many competitions that maybe you felt like you needed to go to resulted in a deeper level of training and adaptation that maybe didn't exist when you're going out of the work so frequently, and thinking that you need to travel and run around and do all the stuff that we were doing, that maybe it isn't so necessary, certainly in the short term, or maybe how we do it in terms of blocks of training and then blocks of competition and that kind of thing, as opposed to 3 weeks training a meet, 3 weeks training a meet, like that. Maybe more like the Mare Nostrum type of idea, or the idea of doing that in Quebec and doing 3 competitions in Pointe Claire, Camo, and downtown Montreal or Quebec City or something, and doing a circuit like that. I think this is something you've talked about before, right? And those kinds of ideas, those are ideas that can work and will work in the future, I think.
So the pandemic made us better. The pandemic taught us how to be a better coach.
I think so. It got us out of our comfort zone.
Yeah. So we are going to the end, and I would say 2, but usually when I say 2, I have 3 or 4 more questions. I'm going to try to stick to that. I usually ask the same question at the end of the show, but I'm going to reserve that question for me. And I'm going to ask you. I've been given the head coach position in Camo, and I'm pretty proud and pretty happy to go to that challenge.
Yeah.
And I'd like to ask you honestly, what would be, because you know me a little bit since a while, so I'd like you to ask you honestly, what would be your advice for me?
I think keep doing what you're doing, because I think you're growing as a coach and as a person and understanding the athletes better. And realizing that it's not about you, it's about them, right? And your job is to just be there and as best possible get them as ready as they can, but then get out of the way, right? And I saw that in the trials. I felt like that was one of the best meets that you guys have had in a long time, in the sense that kids were engaged, they were purposeful, and they were having fun doing what they were doing, and they looked good. I think the guy who ran your dryland program did a really good job with those girls, and they carried that on through the Olympic Games, and they were a factor in the meet and in the team. And I think that just if you can capture that sort of feeling and that sort of tone in your program more often than not, then you're going to be very successful.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much. My last question would be, if you have to give any advice to all the coaches who want to look at the show and listen to it on whatever platform, what would be the best advice from your experience as a coach that you could give to a lot of coaches who have that desire, that will to achieve something close to what you did?
I think you have to show up every day, right? You have to not take anything or not assume anything, that you have to basically start from zero every season, every year, and understand that what happened last year doesn't mean that that's going to happen this year necessarily. And you have to coach what's in front of you and really enjoy that process all the time, because sometimes you have great swimmers in front of you and sometimes they're just developing swimmers, and your job is to make them great. And so there's two sides to that. One, don't mess it up, and two, bust your butt to try to help these kids achieve what they're trying to achieve. But if it's only about you and you're living your aspirations and goals through the swimmers, never usually works out that well, right? You just have to try to help them do what they're trying to do within the context of your philosophy and your value system and your belief system, so that you're happy with what you're doing, right? But always respect the swimmers and respect the parents, and understand that it's a privilege to do what we do.
Thank you. Yes, it is, and it's a privilege to do as well what they are doing. Sometimes I love to remind them that every year I start almost with the same speech to the younger one that I had before, telling them that they have to tap a little bit on the back by themselves, because there is not many guys doing what they are doing, and that's a privilege as well, and make them feel special, because this is special what they are doing. There is not many swimmers or athletes in the world doing what those kids and adult swimmers are doing in the world.
No, they're the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah. 1% of 1%. I like that. Thank you very much, Tom. It was a pleasure to have you. I really enjoyed that hour that we spent. I hope that many people are going to watch it. Don't miss this episode on YouTube, on Spotify, on all the platform where you can catch a podcast. This will be available pretty soon. Thank you very much, Tom. And
you're welcome.
Wishing you all the best. Enjoy Napoli. I'm sure you will enjoy the wine and the great food there, and you will have some good time with your swimmer Brent Hayden, and try to figure out all the challenge coming up toward you. So one more time, thank you. I feel very honored to being able to spend a little bit of time with you. So merci beaucoup, Tom. And this was episode 54. Have a good night, everyone, and bye-bye. Thank you.
Salut.